Right, so I've been keeping fish for about 15, 20 years now. I've had them since I was a tiny little kid. And if you're thinking about sort of starting your first tank or getting into the hobby, or you're wanting to try something that's a little bit different, African cichlids are very hard to turn a blind eye to. So I've kept these multiple times. I've had planted tanks, I've had community setups, American cichlids, saltwater tanks, reef tanks. I've had them all. I've dabbled in every single bit of it. And for the majority of it, I've been successful with the fish that I've kept. Sometimes I've been a little bit unsuccessful with African cichlids, just based on setups and mixtures that I've had. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through all the reasons why you should really consider keeping these fish. So the first thing is the variety. Now, when I first started keeping fish, I had a little community tropical setup with tetras in and things like that. And I first started looking at African cichlids in the shop. This is what can be off-putting about it to begin with. So when you're looking at these in one tank, you're told by the people who own the stores that you shouldn't be mixing these with other fish, and you can only have African cichlids in your tank, which is correct and is 100% good information. But what you don't want to let you put off is, if you do just have African cichlids, that doesn't mean you're just going to have one fish in your tank. These come in so many different varieties. They're from Lake Malawi, which is an evolutionary miracle. So they're all sort of housed in this one massive lake, but because of all the different areas, the sandy bottoms, the open water, the rocks, you know, rocky shores and things like that, they've all sort of developed their own unique traits and sort of colorations to breed and things like that. So although you can only keep African cichlids in one setup, there is such a big variety of different ones that you can get. So you can see in my tank here, I've got all different shapes, sizes, colour morphs. So you get a good variety and you can really get into your different species and sort of start doing some good research on it. It keeps you interested. So variety for me, although you can only keep them with African cichlids and not in sort of a community setup, so to speak, you can still have a community of African cichlids where they all look different and have different colours, which looks really good. Another reason you want to get these as well is really the ease of care. So by no means is you know, an African cichlid setup a beginner level setup, but it's not overly difficult to manage it. It's more about managing the aggression and the tank mates. So you're going to get fights and things with these fish. Okay, you're going to run into some deaths in the tank, but it's managing the hierarchy and things which is the main issue. Apart from that, these are genuinely solid, hardy fish. So they're quite tolerant of sort of fluctuations in water parameters. They're quite tolerant to temperature fluctuations. Obviously, it's not ideal, and you don't want to make that sort of something that a behavior that you follow and a mistake you keep making. But we do make mistakes on tanks, and you know, we have heaters fail, we have water parameters fluctuate when we're doing big water changes and things like that. So these are very tolerable to that, and they're very forgiving. So if you're not getting things bob on and bang on here and there, it's not going to wipe out your whole tank. These fish can tolerate it to a degree, which makes them fairly easy to care for. The biggest part of it is managing aggression and things like that. That's where the challenge come in, and that's why I wouldn't say they're a beginner level fish. But that isn't to say that you shouldn't keep African cichlids if it's your first tank. It's really easy to get your head around, and then once you've sort of experienced what goes on a couple of times, then you more or less hit the nail on the head with it. Another reason I love African cichlids is the biotope that they live in, so the scape that they require. All you need is sand and rocks. And there's some, I've had tanks where I've had sort of coral reefs in, and big planted tanks where you've got a lot going on and there's a lot to look at, and they are really peaceful and really nice to see. But for me, there's just something about the simplicity of just having some nice rocks in the tank. So you can get your scaping rocks like your irigumi and your sort of cliff-faced elephant skin rocks, even your sort of Marco rocks and things as well. But it's just the simplicity of the scaping. You don't have plants in there that you have to look after, because although if you have planted tanks, they do die, and some plants do die and the leaves get funny, and you have to keep maintaining and trimming to make it look like as good as it does on these videos. You have to do a lot of work and maintain it, but there's just the simplicity of having just rocks. It makes it really easy to clean your tank. It makes it easy to clean your substrate. You can put a lot of flow into the tank as well, which gets all the crap and muck off the bottom of the tank and takes it into your overflow or your filter. So because we're not overdoing it and it's just rocks, we've not got plants to worry about and things, it just makes it a lot more of a simpler process and a lot easier to maintain. So the next thing that makes these fish great is their characters. So when I say that is they seem to have quite a bit more intelligence than your usual fish. So things like your tetras, your angelfish, things like that. I love those fish, but they swim around quite mindlessly. Like it's almost like they're programmed. They're like ants. Just sort of swimming about, shoaling. They don't seem to have any personality. The African cichlids, they all have their own individual personality, which is one of the main reasons I love keeping them so much. So certain fish will have specific behaviours, like some will be shy, some will be boisterous, some are like little puppies, some are hungry all the time. Certain fish don't like other individual fish and they'll pick on that particular one each time. So they've got a lot of personability, a lot of character. Even if I come home from work and I come into the back door, these fish can see me through the window in the back door, and they'll all swim towards the end of the tank when I'm coming home. They recognise me, they know I'm coming in to feed them. Whether it just be a food response, but as far as fish go, it's relatively intelligent. A lot of South American cichlids have that same sort of trait. So your Oscars are the same, they're very personable. They just got a great deal of character, which is what I love about them. So African cichlids, genuinely, if you're keeping Malawi cichlids, they're going to come in 3 different types. So you're going to get your mbunas, which are your rock-dwelling cichlids, typically more aggressive of the 3. And then you're going to get your peacock cichlids and your haps, your haplochromuses. So with each one of these types of cichlid that you're going to keep, you're going to get a lot of activeness. So you're going to, the fish are always active. They're never sort of hiding and not doing anything. Your mbunas, because they're rock dwellers, they can tend to hide in rocks, but if you have a good community of them, they're always out and about. They're diurnal. You're always seeing them do stuff when your lights are on. So there's always something to look at. With your peacocks and haps, they're typically open water swimmers. So they're constantly swimming backwards and forwards. They're always out and about. They're always having little chases, So they're always active, there's always a spectacle, there's always something to watch. So you're never looking at a boring tank where fish are hiding away or they're just sat in little corners. They're always moving about, they're always active, and it just makes really good viewing when you have a big display tank on them as well. And then lastly, but by no means least, is just the coloration of the fish. So they come in so many different vibrant colours, patterns, shapes, that's what makes them one of the more appealing fish, especially in the sort of freshwater hobby. You're not going to get more colourful fish than this. Obviously your discus are competitors, they do compete with these, although they can be a little bit more finicky with the water parameters, and they're a little bit slower, they're not as active as your African cichlids. But as far as coloration goes, these are some of the most colourful fish you're going to get in freshwater. They will rival saltwater fish. I have seen them put in tanks where there's imitation corals in there, which I hate. Do not do that. It's a pet peeve of mine. But they do sort of blend into those sort of tanks. So when they've got coral in there, you can easily, if you don't know what you're looking at, you can easily be fooled into thinking that they're saltwater fish because of the vibrancy of the colours. So coloration is a big sort of pull for these fish. They're also relatively easy to breed. So if you're thinking of sort of getting a setup and you want to start breeding fish, your mbunus will breed successfully in the tank. So you'll get babies popping up and you'll see them grow. It's a little bit harder with the peacocks and the harps, because when they breed, they have predatory tendencies, so they can pick off the babies. But if you've got separate tank setups, they're relatively easy to breed. It doesn't require a lot of work, and separating fish, if you've got males and females in the same tank, you're going to get babies. So they're all my pros for keeping African cichlids. If you're thinking about getting them and you're thinking about diving into the world, go for it, take the leap. They're relatively easy to keep. Although they're not advertised or spoken about as a beginner level fish, I think if you're thinking about getting your first tank, you can still be successful with these. You can get a lot of knowledge and aquarium experience from keeping them. Obviously, they do come with the drawbacks. There are cons to keeping African cichlids, but we'll run through all the cons and what you need to be wary of before you start keeping them in a different video.